Hello and welcome to Newswatch with me, Samira Ahmed. Vital insight or just demoralising coverage? The BBC's week of special NHS reporting is in spotlight. And is it ever justified to show an image of a child who's just been killed, as Newsnight did in a report about the recent US raid in Yemen? Reports about the National Health Service have been especially frequent on television news bulletins over the past few weeks of winter. But this week, perhaps more so than ever, the BBC was running a week of special programmes and reports which they branded as a health check about the state of the NHS, including Monday's panorama and lengthy lead items on the 6 and 10 o'clock bulletins on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday.
7 years ago, this council spent about a third of its budget on providing care and support for people who are older and disabled. But now the cost of adult social care is heading towards half of its budget, with demand still increasing. And that's at the heart of the problems they're wrestling with in there today.
Inside the Royal Blackburn Hospital, the BBC was given unrestricted access to witness the pressures facing the NHS.
They've been patients here for 6 and 8 hours. Can't find a bed for them.
Queuing for 5 hours in the corridor. It's not what you expect for a country like ours, is it really?
Many hospitals like this one are running at 95% of capacity. That means they're nearly full. So with more emergency cases coming in and difficulties discharging some patients back into the community, some of those needing surgery are having to wait longer.
Health editor Hugh Pym there, and before that, special correspondent Ed Thomas and social affairs correspondent Alison Holt. No question about the comprehensive nature of the coverage, but some viewers told us by telephone and on webcam that they were concerned about the effect of that coverage and that the BBC had an axe to grind.
Every night this week we have seen the BBC 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. news leading with a story on the current state of the NHS. We all know there are many problems in the NHS and there are many reasons for this, including bed blocking, immigration, lifestyles, health tourism, waste, poor value procurement, trivial A&E visits, etc, etc. And yet BBC News would rather have us believe the problems are all down to so-called Tory cuts and that throwing more money at the problem will solve everything. Please, BBC, get your house in order and start reporting the news, not making it. This biased campaign should have been reserved for a panorama programme, not the main news lead.
Hi, my name's Grace. I understand that there are serious strains under the NHS. I understand that things have gotten worse by some measures. However, BBC News seems to be desperately trying to make us feel angry. We have far better NHS care than most people on the planet. Please try and help us to feel grateful for what we have and try to help make things better, rather than just constantly tell us, oh, this is a disaster.
Dear Newswatch, I am not newsworthy because I am one of the thousands of people who have received treatment from the NHS over the last few months who have nothing to complain about, but only praise for the dedicated professional staff who have carried out treatment on their behalf. This week we have been bombarded by the news on all channels telling us what is wrong with our National Health Service. It's broken. What you have as a BBC is a responsibility in terms of making sure we don't demoralise the staff any more than they are. I asked the nurse, was she impacted by the adverse publicity seen on the news this week? And she looked at me as if it was a silly question.
The BBC has spent the last week with intensive wall-to-wall coverage of pretty bad news about the NHS and some important things that needed saying. Waiting times and waiting on trolleys is a real issue for a lot of people. However, the effect of that is just to produce a downward spiral of gloom and despondency for staff and patients alike. So, come on, BBC, it's not that we don't need to know about these bad things, and they do need addressing. But I think for the benefit of the NHS and our appreciation of it, we should hear some of the good news too.
Well, the health editor for BBC News, Hugh Pym, has been on air for much of this week and joins me now. Hugh, viewers, as you've sensed from looking at those clips, have felt there's been so much coverage focused on, all the negative things, the A&E waiting times, cancellations. They wonder if the BBC is, in a sense, hyping up a sense of crisis.
Well, first of all, there have been several strong news lines which we would want to cover as part of our BBC News output. We did some research on waiting times, patients who were waiting longer than 18 weeks in England to get surgery. That's the target. They should be seen for routine surgery within 18 weeks. And the number's up 163%. We discovered from our data that 9 out of 10 hospitals are running at levels that are deemed to be above what is normally safe. We've had the Institute for Fiscal Studies saying that health spending in England has gone up, but per person will start falling. And then on Thursday, extremely bleak figures from NHS England on how A&E performance in December was the worst since records began, and looked likely to get worse in January after documents that were leaked to us. And I think it's our job to report on facts and figures about the performance of the NHS. And in terms of staff morale, take on board what people were saying there about staff feeling a bit downtrodden because of this. Equally, we've had contact, emails, calls and so on from quite a few staff who've said, look, it's really good that the BBC is focusing on what's really going on, from senior consultants to more junior doctors to nurses, saying, look, this is precisely what the BBC should be doing and hasn't done enough of in the past.
I suppose it's finding that balance, and there was, the one viewer there saying they felt that the coverage ends up being like a downward spiral of gloom and despondency, and that's so overwhelming that perhaps it needs to be balanced with some coverage that shows what is being more positive.
Yes, I think there has been quite a lot of positive coverage, as it happens. On the Victoria Derbyshire programme, there was a big debate on health involving patients and staff and other health experts, and that included some patient testimony on the positives that they found with the NHS. We've had coverage on the World at One throughout the week on different aspects of how GPs are coming to terms with the different challenges. The News Channel has had reports, including one from Airedale, on innovative schemes to link up care homes with GP practices using technology and so on. So I think we have tried to emphasise the positives. In a piece I did, we had a Yeovil hospital scheme which aims to look after older patients in their own sort of bespoke facility away from A&E. So we've tried hard to talk about the positives and possible solutions, but equally stating the facts, which are pretty straightforward. It's a tricky balance, but ultimately we're holding a very important institution to account, and that institution really should be all about providing the best possible patient care, and for government making sure that it's funded adequately, and equally it's making efficient use of taxpayers' money.
Some complaints have been that it's felt like the BBC has almost been politically campaigning, and saying this is all about more funding for the NHS.
Well, there is a groundswell of opinion that the NHS should have more funding, that health spending in the UK as a whole, as a share of national income, is below France and Germany, has fallen. The IFS during the week have made clear that spending will fall in a way it's never done before in terms of spending per head of the population. And we have taken those arguments and put them forward. We've been accused in the past of not addressing lack of funding. We haven't been politicising it. We've stated what the facts are, and there is actually a cross-party move now campaigning for more funding. Equally, we have been very clear that there are some who feel the NHS can make more efficient use of its resources, and we have reflected that argument that it's not just about money, it's about better ways of joining up care, better ways of spending money. But it is an important debate, and I think it's only right to address the issue of funding throughout the week.
Hugh Pym, thank you. Now, when is it justified to broadcast close-up images of someone who has recently died? The question was raised this week after a Newsnight report on Wednesday from the village in Yemen where a couple of weeks ago US Special Forces attacked an al-Qaeda compound. Several civilians were killed, including, it was thought, a boy whose photograph Newsnight showed. Simon Kingsley Young felt there was absolutely no need to show the child's face. The point could have been made simply by pixelating their face or even taking a shot of the body body from a distance. To make people look into a dead child's eyes was unwarranted and unnecessary. I too have questions over the justification of the attack, but where was the respect and dignity all dead people deserve, as described in the BBC's own editorial guidelines? Well, we put that point to BBC News, and they told us, the BBC's guidelines require strong editorial justification for the use of images of the dead. In this case, the central claim of our story was that US troops had killed a number of women and children. The image of a child believed to have been killed in the attack represented strong evidence of this, so we felt its use was justified and not gratuitous. Finally, we've almost managed to get through an edition of Newswatch without mention of Donald Trump, but not quite. A new strand about the start of his presidency, 100 Days, has been running daily on the news channel. He certainly has some fierce critics, but even some of his fans aren't happy, like Steve Hughes, who writes, "Do we have to suffer the 100 Days news feature at 1900? Much as I like America and much as I admire what President Trump has done, is doing and is planning to do, having a programme dedicated to it is a bit much. On the flip side, though, I do take the opportunity to load the dishwasher when it's on." Thanks for all your comments this week. If you want to share your opinions on BBC News and current affairs, or even appear on the programme, you can call us on 0370 010 6676 or email newswatch@bbc.co.uk. You can find us on Twitter @NewsWatchBBC, and do have a look at our website for previous discussions. The address for that is bbc.co.uk/newswatch. That's all from us. We'll be back to hear your thoughts about BBC News coverage again next week. Goodbye.